Parshas Vayakhel-Pekudei. This week's Parsha continues, in essence, a description of, or at least dealing with the building, the construction of the Mishkan. Previous Parshas, Truma Tetzava and part of Kisisa talks about the plan, and then this is carried out in Vayakhel-Pekudei. Except that the first three verses don't talk about the Mishkan. What do they talk about? Shabbos. So let's see what it says. This is Perek Lamed Hey Pasuk Aleph, that's 35:1. It reads, Vayakhel Moshe es kol adas b'nei Yisrael. And Moshe gathered all of the congregation of the children of Israel. Vayomer lehem, and he said to them, Ele hadavorim asher tzivah Hashem lasos osam. These are the things that Hashem said, commanded to do. Okay, that's verse 1. Now we have two more verses in this subsection. This is Pasuk Beis, verse 2. Sheishes yamim te'aseh melacha. For 6 days your work shall be done, or during 6 days your work shall be done. Uvayom hashvi'i yeh lachem kodesh, and the seventh day will be for you holy, or designated. Shabbos, Shabboson Lashem. A complete stoppage of work, Shabbos, Shabbat, for God. Kol ha'oseh bo melacha yumas. Anyone who does melacha on that day will die. Melacha is defined specifically as one of the 39 categories of prohibited activity and their derivatives as well. So anybody who does those, and they're derived from the building of the Mishkan, but we're not there yet. Then the next verse. So now we talk about Shabbos. And the next verse zooms in what appears to be granular detail about one of the prohibited categories of activity on Shabbos, which is Lo seva'aru eish b'chol moshvosechem. Don't ignite or kindle a fire in all of your dwellings b'yom haShabbos, on the day of the Sabbath. So this presents a question, like, why is the discussion of Shabbos interposed here? Why stop the discussion about the Mishkan to talk about Shabbos? And once you're talking about Shabbos, why single out lighting a fire? Havara. Why do we need that? So Rashi says, first of all, based on Gemara, that the juxtaposition of these two verses, or the beginning of the discussion of the building of the Mishkan, begins with a prohibition of Shabbos to tell you that the binyan mikdash, the building of the mikdash, is not doche Shabbos, doesn't preempt the prohibitions of Shabbos, meaning you can't build the Mishkan on Shabbos. Okay, so that's why, according to Rashi, according to the Gemara, we're talking about Shabbos. Now, what's this business about fire? Why not talk about, you can't plow, you can't sow, you can't slaughter an animal, you can't dye a skin, all of which are prohibited activities. So why this discussion about Eish? So Rashi cites two opinions that are cited in the Gemara in Shabbos. One of them is Havara Lelav Yatzas, that lighting a fire is actually less serious of an offense when measured by its punishment. It is an exception to the rule, according to one opinion, in that it does not subject its perpetrator, shall we say, somebody who violates the laws of Shabbos and goes ahead and lights a fire. He's not subject to the death penalty. So it's an exception in the sense of the administration of the punishment. The other opinion is Havar L'chalik Yatzas, that it is actually the specific detail that really reflects on the entire category of malachos, which is that if you light a fire and you do all other manner of prohibited activities, you are liable for each one. Just like you're liable for lighting a fire by itself, you're liable for each one, even if you do all of them together. So that's a technical explanation, but why here? Why in the introduction to the construction of the Mishkan? So the Chizkuni says, he begins a little bit to chip away at this enigma by saying that they're both Kodesh, that just like the Mishkan is for Hashem, so Shabbos is for Hashem, and it says Lashem. So both are for Hashem. Well, I think we need a little bit more detail, because aren't all the mitzvahs for Hashem? We also have an interesting exception to the prohibition of lighting a fire on Shabbos, which is, it says B'chol moshvo seichem. It says you may not kindle a fire in all of your dwelling places, and Chazal say in the Gemara that this excludes in the Beis HaMikdash, or in the Mishkan. This excludes the service in the temple, which we know had offerings, had other uses of fire, and the prohibition of using a fire did not apply in the Mishkan or in the Beis HaMikdash during the Avodah. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to offer the korbanos, which were burned on the Mizbeach. There's the Beis Moked, the place where the fire stays burning all the time, and that can be stoked on Shabbos. So in the Beis HaMikdash, there is no prohibition insofar as the service goes. A person couldn't do something individually. You couldn't light a cigarette or light a match for another purpose. But for the service in the Beis HaMikdash, it's permitted. So the Meshech Chochma explains the distinction. So why is it permitted in the Beis HaMikdash? So Meshech Chochma says, in a place, in a place where the Shechina, the divine presence, dwells. So ein tzarich lios edus Hashem bara es olam. You don't need to give testimony, if you will, that God created the world. That is what you're doing. You are serving the creator of the world in the holiest place, in the most intense place of connection to Hashem. So then the observances that we follow for Shabbos, as a sign, as our testimony, if you will, that Hashem created the world in 6 days and on the seventh day he rested, that is unnecessary in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay. So the Meshech Chochma continues. So why isn't fire permitted on Shabbos, where we are giving testimony? So he says, or rather, why is the building of the Mishkan, why does it not preempt Shabbos? If we say that the Beis HaMikdash, or the Mishkan, the intense focus of our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we don't need the reminding. So how about in the building? Well, until it's built, until the service is commenced, the Shechina is not there. It's just a work in progress. Okay, so we have this juxtaposition of Shabbos with the building of the Mishkan. One reason, according to Rashi, is to tell us that you're not allowed to build the Mishkan on Shabbos. And there's a contrast of the fire that is used in the Mishkan on Shabbos, but not outside of the Mishkan. B'chol Moshe V'Osechem. We have another verse that connects the concept of Shabbos and Mikdash. This is in Vayikra, Perik, Perik Yotes Pasuk Lamed, that's 1930, which says, Es Shabbosai Tishmaru Ves Mikdashi Tira'u Ani Hashem. Honor my Shabbosim, revere my holy place. I am God. In other words, there's a connection between the two, and I might suggest that the connection is not just a technical one of understanding that one activity preempts the other activity or does not preempt the other activity, but that they're actually very similar in their Kedusha. One, the Mikdash, is a place of intense sanctity of place, of space. Shabbos is a time of intense Kedusha, of intense sanctity in time. You have time and space. And so you have the restrictions of Shabbos that apply to that time, and that includes lighting a fire. You have the restrictions of Shabbos that apply in the Mikdash, but not completely. And those restrictions don't apply to the lighting of fire. Well, if one intense place of connection permits a fire, why doesn't the other? And I'd like to suggest that it is precisely because of the desisting from lighting a fire and other activities that creates that sanctity. It's not needed to create the sanctity of space, but it is needed to create the sanctity of time. And that is what gives us the sanctity of Shabbos. In modern times, the prohibition of fire still persists, but it's been applied to the new development of electronic devices. You have some people who cut corners. You have some people who use they call it half Shabbos, or they text on Shabbos or whatever. And I feel sorry for them, because anybody who has observed Shabbos fully and has disconnected from their electronic devices on the basis of lo savaru es b'chol moshe b'yom Shabbos is freed from the pressure of the week. And it's a modern pressure. It's not a pressure that was felt 100 years ago or even 50 years ago, but it's felt now. And somebody who is not tethered to his phone, who is not waiting for the next text or the next email or the next video feed or whatever, and instead is free to connect or to reconnect with his family, with his friends, with himself, to read from a book. This creates an atmosphere of Shabbos where a person can feel restored. The restoration is Lashem. It enables us to focus on our true identity as Jews and our true identity as servants of Hashem. And if we read the Shabbos davening, especially the Shemona Esrei, especially the recurring paragraph about Shabbos, Kadshenu b'mitzvosecha, v'sein chelkenu b'sarasecha, sanctify us with your mitzvos, give us our Torah, v'tzevim l'chasenu, be satisfied, be happy with our rest. Sabenu mituvecha, v'samchenu b'shuasecha, satisfy us with your goodness, cause us to rejoice with your saving, with your redemption of us. We have an opportunity to focus on things that we normally let go, or we don't focus on as much because we are preoccupied with Sheshes Yamim Te'as Semelacha, your work must be done. We must be involved in the world. But we also, when it comes to our Mishkan Hazmani, our island of sanctity in time, Lo Sava'aru Eish B'chol Mashvosechem, enables us to have a genuine, restful, and peaceful Shabbos where we can focus on what's really important. Have a good Shabbos.